This is your host, John Gillespie, for your weekly podcast, Commissioner's Corner, the KAEP. Guys, here in the KAEP, we have one promise and one promise only. That is to make you a much smarter fantasy football player, yet a much dumber person. It's been 266 long days since an episode of the KAEP was aired. So I am chomping at the bit to break down these matchups for you guys. And what a thrilling week one this truly was. Guys, this was the first time in the league history that every single game came down to Monday night. There was a Monday night doubleheader this year, as always, and every game was not clinched until Monday night. So that's a record. So it really provided some thrilling must-see TV as far as our fantasy matchups. Alright guys, before we begin, I'd like to give a shout out to our sponsor, definitely Chicken Milk. Unleash the power of the chicken today with Chicken Milk, the nation's #1 performance-enhancing supplement. And also give a shout out to our producer, Pete Serpa. Thank you, Peter, for all that you do in making this podcast possible. So without further ado, let's dive right in to our game of the week. An AFC South clash between the Chief and Lambeau Calrissian. And Lambeau Calrissian narrowly escapes with the victory, 165.8 to 165.1. Guys, Pedro Guzman, a.k.a. the Monday Night Monster, was down by over 60 points coming into Monday Night Football. Let's just say there's a reason he is dubbed the Monday Night Monster, because he almost struck again. He came within 0.7 points of victory and almost accomplishing one of the greatest comebacks in our league's history. But that was all for naught, because Lambeau came out on top, and his top performer was James Conner. 135 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns to the tune of 34.2 fantasy points. Guys, we all knew that James Conner would have sufficient volume and had a potential for a decent day in the wake of the whole Le'Veon Bell drama. But nobody saw this performance coming. He had a very Le'Veon Bell type performance, and he opened a lot of eyes with this game. Definitely my eyes for sure. So that was his top performer for Lambeau Calrissian, His honorable mention is Kenny Stills. 4 catches, 106 yards, and 2 touchdowns to the tune of 26.6 fantasy points, with Stills being the #1 option on the Miami Dolphins passing game. Look for this type of volume to continue. However, it's unreasonable to expect him to score 26 points each week, which I know that won't happen. And for the Chief, his top performer was none other than Tyreek the Streak Hill, with a ridiculous week 1 performance, 7 catches, 169 yards, and 3, not 1, not 2, but 3 touchdowns to the tune of 42.3 fantasy points. Tyreek the Streak Hill is truly faster than Yah. Pedro's honorable mention is none other than the stud, the workhorse, Todd Gurley, 108 yards rushing and a receiving touchdown to the tune of 23.7 fantasy points. With the victory, Lambeau Calrissian improves to 1-0, and the Chief falls to 0-1. The next game on the tally was What's Cooking versus Stafford Infection, with What's Cooking defeating Stafford Infection in a commanding fashion, 135.3 to 89.3. Austin's top performer was Michael Thomas with a franchise record 16 receptions for 180 yards and a touchdown to the tune of 38 fantasy points. And for Garrett, his top performer was Julio the Machine Jones, 10 catches, 169 yards to the tune of 28 fantasy points. With the victory, Austin improves to 1-0, and Stafford Infection falls to 0-1. Moving on to the next game on the tally, the Little Lamb versus I Smith on You. Congratulations to the Little Lamb for the victory, 131.2 to 103.3. Ethan Lopez's top performer was Mike Evans. It's nice to see Mike Evans back to his dominating ways of a couple of years ago. He had 7 catches, 147 yards, and a touchdown to the tune of 27.7 fantasy points. And for Corbin, your top performer was Drew Breezy, 439 yards and 3 touchdowns to the tune of 31.6 fantasy points. It's also very good to see Drew Brees go back to his gun-slinging ways. Some things are right in the world. It just feels right when Drew Brees is throwing for 400 yards. Am I right, guys? But last year was strange. So with the victory, the Little Lamb improves to 1-0, and Corbin falls to 0-1. Moving on to the next game on the tally, Always Sunny Wildcard versus the Dungeon Master himself. Congratulations to Riley for the victory, 127.1 to 102.7. Riley, your top performer was none other than Jared Cook. Who saw this coming? Jared Cook, 9 catches, 180 yards to the tune of 27 fantasy points. Guys, are we in the Twilight Zone here? Jared Cook, the guy who couldn't do anything with Aaron Rodgers, the guy who was a bum for his whole career, shows up today to have the game of his life. It was amazing to watch. I was in awe of this performance. So congratulations to Riley for starting Jared Cook there as well. Dungeon Master, your top performer was Odell Beckham Jr. Very impressive outing against Jalen Ramsey himself. 11 catches for 111 yards to the tune of 22 fantasy points. With the victory, Always Sunny Wildcard improves to 1-0, while Dungeon Master falls to 0-1. Moving on to the next game on the tally, the North King Vikings versus Lady Lagasire herself. Congratulations to Kirk Miley for the victory, 129.2 to 122.2. That's a lot of twos, Kamala. Kirk's top performer was none other than Alvin the Natural Kamara. Guys, this guy is just amazing. He's special. 9 catches, over 100 yards receiving, 29 rushing yards, and 3 touchdowns for 43.1 fantasy points. It's ridiculous. I was not a believer in Kamara this year. I thought there's no way he can keep up that efficiency and that production from last year, especially in the timeshare. But man, I think I'm eating my words in this one because he looks special. Truly, truly special. And Kamala, your top performer is Phillip Rivers. Nice call starting him. 424 yards and 3 touchdowns to the tune of 29 fantasy points. With the victory, the North King Vikings improved to 1-0, and Lady Lagasire falls to 0-1. And our final game on the tally, last but not least, Super Mariota Brothers versus Orange Crush, our defending, reigning champion Juan Guzman. Congratulations to Ethan Taylor for knocking off the champ in week 1. 112.1 to 110.9. Juan Guzman is always a tough out each week. And Ethan Taylor, you narrowly escaped the victory. Congratulations on the come from behind win. Your top performer was Joe Mixon. 25.9 fantasy points from 95 yards rushing and a touchdown. And Juan, your top performer was Keenan Allen. 8 catches, 108 yards, and a touchdown to the tune of 24.8 fantasy points. Guys, that wraps up our week 1, our wild week 1. It was something fun to watch. It was definitely something special for sure. I have some awards to give out this week, and our weekly awards of start of the week, that goes to Kamala Burke for starting Phillip Rivers over Deshaun Watson. No, he got you 29 points. Deshaun Watson was a consensus top 5 quarterback play, but you had the goalie to sit him in favor of Phillip Rivers, and it paid off for you, Kamala. Congratulations. And our sit of the week goes to Kirk Miley and the North King Vikings for sitting Deshaun Jackson. He went off, and this is what Deshaun Jackson does. He has random games where he scores 30 points and then he disappears for 8 weeks. Kirk, don't feel bad about this. Everybody sat Deshaun Jackson. I would have sat him too. Just it is what it is. He's gonna go off. You never know when he's gonna go off. So what can you do? He scored 31.6 fantasy points on 5 catches for 146 yards. All right, guys, that wraps up our Week 1 cap. Until next time, I am your host, John Gillespie. See you on the other side.